Hello. Today we'll talk about the top 10 unusual science experiments in history. The first unbiased scientific experiment will be Newton's jumps. The Newton's slide experiment, or falling apple, is a legendary experiment associated with the famous physicist and mathematician Isaac Newton. According to the legend, when Newton observed an apple falling from a tree, he came to an important discovery about the law of gravity. The story is known thanks to the stories of Newton himself, who in a letter to his friend John Cunningham described his thoughts on the force of gravity using the example of an apple falling. Although there is no evidence that the apple itself fell on Newton's head, the experiment itself symbolizes the beginning of his research in physics. The first unbiased scientific experiment will be burning diamond. The burning diamond experiment is a study that took place in 1694 and was conducted by English chemist and physicist Robert Boyle. In this experiment, he studied the way diamonds were burned to find out if diamond had a connection to carbon. Boyle confirmed that a diamond could be burned in ordinary air, not just in oxygen, as was previously known. He used sunlight to concentrate heat on the diamond, causing it to burn. As a result of the experiment, Boyle showed that diamond is a form of carbon, which was a significant discovery at the time. The first unbiased scientific experiment will be vomit cocktail. The scientific experiment diversionary cocktail, or Brutus cocktail, is a fictionalized mocking term that has no relation to real research or experiments. It can be used both in the English language comic context and in educational materials to reproduce hypothetical examples of incorrectly conducted experiments or unproductive scientific approaches. The term wake-up call is often used to refer to a large amount of alcoholic beverage consumed that can cause negative health consequences. The most impartial scientific experiment will be severe head experiments. This could be a made-up term or a mistranslation. Without more contextual information, it is difficult to say what exactly your questioner meant. Science uses a variety of experiments to investigate different aspects of the brain, such as cognitive function, memory, sensation, movement, and others. Many of these experiments are conducted using functional magnetic resonance imaging, fMRI, electroencephalography, EEG, and other brain imaging techniques that allow scientists to study brain activity and functioning in different conditions and situations. The next unbiased science experiment will be cyborg dog. A cyborg dog scientific experiment is a hypothetical experiment that may be aimed at implanting electronic devices or other technologies into a dog's body in order to study their behavior, health, sensitivity to external stimuli, and other aspects. Such experiments may involve the installation of neurointerfaces to interact with the dog's brain, implantation of biomedical sensors to monitor physiological parameters, or even the development of devices to improve motor activity or environmental perception. These experiments may be important for the development of new technologies in the field of biomedical engineering, neurotechnology, medical devices, and other areas. However, it is important to take into account ethical aspects and ensure the safety and welfare of animals during such research. The unbiased science experiment will be Monkey Mowgli. The Mowgli monkey scientific experiment can be thought of as a study aimed at exploring the possibilities of using brain-computer interface, BCI technologies, to interact with the monkey's brain. Imagine, for example, a study in which a monkey was trained to control the movements of objects or a computer interface using its thoughts. In such an experiment, the monkey could be fitted with an implant with microelectrodes that record the electrical activity of the brain. Then, with the help of special training and machine learning algorithms, the monkey can be taught to associate certain mental commands with the movement of objects or the execution of tasks on a computer. For example, a monkey can be taught to perform tasks by selecting a certain object on a computer screen using simple mental control without physically touching the keyboard or mouse. This can have practical applications in the development of assistive technologies, for people with disabilities or in robotics to control robots through thought communication. The only impartial science experiment will be death rays. A scientific experiment called death rays may involve the study of the effects of different types of electromagnetic rays on organisms or materials. The term is often used in science fiction or popular books to describe groundbreaking but non-existent experiments. Historically, however, the term deadly rays was used in early radiation experiments when researchers studied the effects of X-rays or other types of radiation on organisms. For example, a study of the effects of radiation on plants or animals could be described as a lethal ray experiment. However, it is important to note that modern scientific research in the field of radiation safety adheres to strict ethical standards and safety protocols to protect the subjects and researchers. The next unbiased science experiment will be two-headed dogs. The two-headed dog experiment refers to a series of studies that have been conducted in the past to explore the possibility of combining two organisms into one. One well-known example of such experiments is those conducted by Soviet scientists in the 1920s and 1930s, including Ivan Pavlov and Sergei Bryukhanenko. In such experiments, scientists separated the heads of two dogs and combined them in one body. This allowed scientists to study reactions to stimuli, the functioning of the nervous system, and other physiological aspects of animals. However, such experiments are now considered unethical and unacceptable in modern science because of the suffering caused to animals. Although such experiments were an attempt to understand complex processes in the body, their ethicality and compliance with modern standards of scientific ethics raises serious questions. In the modern scientific environment, research is conducted within the framework of ethical standards that take into account the welfare and protection of animals. The next unbiased science experiment will be Dalton's eyes. The scientific experiment, Dalton's eyes, is one of the imaginary experiments that illustrate important concepts of visual perception and the color spectrum. This experiment itself was not conducted in reality, but it is often used as a mental experiment to explain how we perceive colors. The experiment is based on the theory of John Dalton, a British scientist who studied chemical elements and colors in the 18th century. Dalton imagined that he was seeing the world through the eyes of another person. If each eye has a filter that allows only a certain color spectrum to pass through, he asked himself what colors the world would be if he perceived it through such filters. The only unbiased science experiment will be Eternal Bell. The only unbiased science experiment will be Eternal Bell. The Eternal Bell science experiment is a fictional concept that can be used as a thought experiment to examine certain aspects of physics, time theory, or metaphysics. The idea is that a bell that never stops ringing is placed in a vacuum space without any obstacles such as air resistance or energy loss. Usually, such a bell is imagined as a symbol of eternity or infinity.